If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. I'm Dr. Zach Baker of Rehab to Perform and R2P Academy, and we get a variety of guests on this podcast. You often see our sports residents coming in and talking about research. You'll hear myself, Josh Funk, the owner of R2P, or Corey Jones, Director of Clinical Excellence at R2P, talk about different topics on career, life, different hot topics in PT, and then we get some special guests on. And I'll be honest, this is one of the more interesting guests that you will hear on this podcast. And I'm going to let John Heath, our guest, introduce himself because I am not going to do it justice if I try to encapsulate it in a 10 or 15 second clip. So, John, I appreciate you taking time. I know you are a busy guy. This is probably like one of 25 stops on your day today. But for those listening, give us kind of the Cliff's Notes version of who you are, and then we'll dive deep today into all of the nitty-gritty behind that.
Yeah, perfect. No, thank you so much for having me. I've been a part of R2P for 4 years now, so super cool to be here. I mean, it's pretty simple, man. John Edward Heath is a retired professional athlete. I was an Olympic weightlifter for a very, very, very long time. Obviously, I lost my limb, became a professional sprinter, became an adaptive CrossFit athlete, and then I've done every other hybrid sport known to man as an amputee just to try to push my limits. But I am a DMV native. You know, I grew up in the foster care system between DC and Maryland. Annapolitan, Annapolis is home. I work in legislation now. I'm the CEO of the Adaptive Athletics Foundation of Maryland. But overall, man, I'm just a guy just trying to, educate individuals on disabilities, adaptive sports, and just truly get in the nitty-gritty of like how to overcome something as drastic as losing a limb.
That's about as diverse of a resume as I think anybody will ever be in. Yeah, professional athlete. I'm also in legislation. I also do this. I also do that. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I know you've got your hand in a variety of different things. That it kind of comes full circle too, from the athletic world, from the healthcare world, from the legislative kind of Congress world as well. But talk to us a little bit. I mean, we're on a podcast, so people can't see. They obviously heard you say that you had the amputation, but talk to us about the injury. How did it happen? How long ago was it? And how has that kind of helped shape who you are today?
So I got injured in 2016. I think the hardest thing about the media and like the story is the fact that everyone thinks that I got injured in May 21st, 2021 and my leg was chopped off. You know what I mean? Because when you hear somebody got amputated, you kind of think like it was drastic. You woke up, you're missing a limb, you're freaking out. That's not what happened to me. I got injured in 2016. For those that don't know, I served in the military for 10 years. I was in the Marine Corps, and I got injured, but it wasn't the initial injury that caused all of this. It was the repetitive surgery, leading to having a salvaged limb, which led to, by definition, malpractice. That's kind of what it was. When I got out of service, I was at surgery number 10. I was at 10 years of service, 10 surgeries. And then I got out of service. I coached at Navy, Naval Academy's down the street. And I was like, they were like, hey, we got to do another surgery. Because if you knew me before the amputation, I was by definition disabled. I needed a walker. I needed a specific type of orthotics. It's called the IDEO Exosim. And then I went in, Baltimore University of Maryland Medical Center was who did the surgery. Ironically, full circle, as you said, Dr. Abawi is my surgeon from surgeries number 11 and 12. She advocated for the amputation. She actually just met with the Columbia team, R2P, right? So it's like a whole community thing. But the ironic thing about it is she feels like she failed me as a surgeon, right? right? So she's got this like negative connotation of the fact that I'm an amputee. Successful for me, not so successful for her psychology on as far as like, you know, I didn't do my job to save him. But fortunately, her advocating for it sent my life on a different trajectory, and I just don't think that anybody's really going to comprehend that unless you knew me prior and then know like who I became. So fast forward, you know, she advocated for me, and it was actually fairly quick, but it's just crazy because I had wanted the amputation in 2018. My biggest fear was getting out of service and then coming to the civilian world and having to deal with all of this like medical stuff. And you hear the nightmares about like military, you know, insurance nightmares and stuff like that. So that's kind of where like it was instant. She advocated for me. They rushed the paperwork up. They approved everything. Dude, I was amputated 30 days after she like sent it up, you know? So like at that point, it was more so like, okay, you've got to make a decision because we were all training for trials. You know what I mean? Like if you know my story, like Devin Allen, Olympian 2-time, you know, Eagles wide receiver, he played a role. He was training. Joe Delgado, you know, Morgan Mitchell, Australian Olympian. So all these people we were all training for something. Now you're telling me that all these years of training are about to be thrown out of the window because you've got to make a decision of attempting to go to trials at 60% or having the amputation and starting your life all over. Same time, Alex Smith and I, you know, we're very good friends. He was my mentor at that time. He was trying to salvage his limb. I was trying to get rid of my limb. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it was like such a crazy dynamic. And, you know, as you can tell, I went with it. And I don't look back, you know. So that's kind of where we're at as far as the amputation and injury.
It's kind of wild. It is a significant decision to move forward with the amputation from the medical side of things. And I always not joke around, but try to keep my colleagues and myself humble in the sense of we beat ourselves up for relatively benign scenarios. Like, yeah, a bad day for me is making somebody's patellar tendinopathy irritated. A bad day for a surgeon can be life-threatening. A bad day in the military can be catastrophic.
100%.
My wife is a labor and delivery nurse, and she used to, you know, make fun of me because I'd come home and I'd be all grumpy and I'd be pouting. She's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Oh, I was running late. This patient got mad because we started 15 minutes late, and then I had them do too much, and their back was sore." And she's like, "Well, you know, Zach, I had to deliver a stillborn baby today, or I had to take care of a mother." Exactly. And I'm like, you know what? We live different lives. We have we're both in healthcare, but different ends of the spectrum. And you know, I can't imagine what you had mentioned, your surgeon who had to finally get to the realization of, hey, the best thing for this individual may be the amputation. And then you as a patient agreeing to it. And I've never been put in that situation. You know, I've had multiple ACL tears, I've dislocated my shoulders, and that's still like pennies on the dollar compared to that injury. You go through, you get the procedure done. What's it like after that?
Oh, my God.
And obviously it's, you know, superficially, I have an idea of what it's like, but for those who have not gone through it, and for speaking of those who have gone through it, what are you working through mentally? What are you working through physically? I don't want to say, you know, how do you overcome it, but how do you adapt? How do you change your mindset and your lifestyle and still be productive and successful after that? However you define it.
Yes. Okay. So let me give you a little insight. I had lost my partner to suicide, same time frame. So I was already dealing with that. And then I was dealing with the separation of the military. And then I was dealing with the identity problem, right? Like, who am I going to be post-service? Because I was an athlete who competed in the DOD. I've been an athlete for a very long time. Who are you now that you're not in this surrounding, right? So those are factors that played a massive role in the psychological and mental side. But let me throw another curveball. This also happened during COVID. So now I'm in the hospital by myself, okay? So I wouldn't say overcome. I will tell you I woke up and I internally was afraid because psychologically I was able-bodied for 30 years. I woke up and I felt something was wrong. I didn't process yet, that I had gone through the amputation. I just woke up from heavy. I'm a big guy, so it's a lot of anesthetics, right? But I will tell you the one factor that sticks to my head is I felt my leg was turned around and that my toes were underneath the bed. Okay, so that was like day one, which is like the freakiest thing. Day two, my toes were wiggling. So I felt like a tentacle, you know what I mean? Like an octopus's tentacle, like a lizard's tail. And it was kind of like your body's reacting to this thing where like you're trying not to freak out, but at the same time you're like, your body's just sending these like signals.
There's something to freak out about.
Mate, it was so bad, right? And I'll tell you, so that was in the hospital. As far as like getting through stuff, I don't think it affected me because Devin Allen was there for me. He took me to the surgery. He sat with me. He brought me acai bowls and stuff. But then he left for trials, okay? And I will tell you what the determining factor of my psychological was. I was on a medication that they gave me for nerves, okay? And the narcotics weren't helping either. When I did the research on the nerve medication that I was on, I read the like mental health side effects, and it was like this big. It's like a big paragraph, So I instantly flushed them, man. And I went to like the nearest dispensary and got like the highest dose of CBD. And that kind of like leaned me off of all this stuff, right? But then now I'm in a house by myself. Dude, I could not do laundry. I could not shower. Like I had this fear of like falling. Everything that you went from being this strong, independent man, now it's like I can't, and I had flights of stairs at that time, you know what I mean? And it was like I couldn't be what I was used to being. And that's where the role started playing because I started watching, I was watching trials. Devin was competing. All my friends were competing. And now I'm sitting here and I'm like, did I make the right decision?
Now, after this, there's going to be a degree of physical therapy, a lot of physical therapy that comes into play,
100%.
And some acutely and just trying to navigate that life transition. And then there's a degree that as active as you are, there's going to be ongoing maintenance just with any athlete where, your PTs and your athletic trainers become best friends with athletes as they're working through all of this. In your experience, and I've gone through PT myself, I've currently been practicing as 13 years, I've had the ability to do clinical rotations and work in various places. I am well aware that not all physical therapists and physical therapy experiences are equal. There are some that are going to get the most out of you. There's some that you're not even going to go back to just because it wasn't enjoyable or it wasn't effective. In your experience, personally, what has allowed you to have the success that you've had? What drives you when you're in the clinic? What makes you want to go back and do more? And whether that's, on a personal connection with the PT or if there's something that an organization or a company is doing, what have you found to be kind of that secret sauce?
So I'm going to start off with, I will tell you that how I found R2P is kind of the determining factor of that. So I had gone through a situation with a gym that had discriminated me 6 days post-amputation. So I did this single leg power clean that went viral on social media. My Olympic weightlifting coach is Sonny Webster, big Olympic weightlifting guy, very live on social. I did this one-legged power clean. I had just gotten out of the hospital, and it was like I just needed to see what it felt like, right? Sonny posted it. It went crazy, right? And I got this influx of messages and, the dopamine motivational stuff on socials and stuff. And the place where I did this kind of like turned around and was like, hey, we don't want you doing this because you're a liability. It was more so like the wording of what they said, okay? So I posted a video on social media because I went from an ultimate high post-amputation, and now you're crushing my dopamine by telling me that I'm a liability. And how you addressed it was kind of the issue for me. Josh Funk reached out to me on Instagram when he saw the video, right? And then, James from Foundation Fitness reached out to me. So, like, my community really showed out in that specific moment of need. I didn't know who Josh Funk was, but I saw that, like, everybody in Annapolis, like, followed him, right? And I start looking at the PT stuff and whatnot. So Josh was like, dude, come use our facility. Let's get you back, right? So I went back to the VA and I was like, hey, I'd like my community care to be here. Come to find out, when I did the appointment, they gave me the address, and R2P in Annapolis is in the backyard of my old house. You know what I mean? So like, I could have easily just wheeled.
Yeah, another full
circle, right? So I remember showing up first day, and for me, it was at the same time. You remember when Jimbo was doing Murph for 365 days?
Yes.
Okay.
I woke up every day. I'm like, how is he still doing this? Like, this is ridiculous.
So Jimbo was training there or doing rehab there, right? So then I came into the picture, and that's kind of what built the relationship in R2P, right? I met MC, I met Funk, and like Josh was very, very, very invested in the progression of my post-amputation. And when I say that, like, I can never thank Josh enough, because I walk, and I'm going to use air quotes for what is normal. If I wear pants, you cannot tell that I'm an amputee. That all has to do with the fact that this man put me through, like, I think it was like a 12-week, like, walking program. You know what I mean? I remember that metronome app, you know what I mean? And like speeding it up, and like, it was just, there was always this excitement of like what the next was. And then I remember him putting me through the sled. I remember the first time I put on a prosthetic, and it was the same day that I had a PT appointment with Josh and Drew, right? Same thing with like the first time I jumped. So it was the fact that when I think PT, in my experience, take outside the professional athletic side, I think it's always directed towards like senior people. Here's the tennis ball. Here's this, right? Sit on this chair. As far as like when I came into the facility, it was like, no, dude, I'm watching people Olympic weightlift. I'm watching people jump. I'm watching people do speed work. And all I could do is like in that moment was like, man, I can't wait to like put on a running blade. And I can't wait until, I'm doing something athletic in this new adaptive world. And that's kind of how it went. And then I finally got my first prosthetic, and we shot off running, man. And when I told them, because I had thought that like, kind of like my pro athletic career was over. I really didn't know much about the Paralympics. I didn't know much about adaptive sports. I knew that I was an Olympic weightlifter. I know that I've been an a weightlifter for 20 years. I was like, that's all I know. And then when I told them, I said, hey, man, like, I want to pursue X, Y, and Z. No one looked at me like I was out of my mind. They were like, so make it happen, right?
How are we going to do this?
You get what I mean? And that's how it went. And I think what keeps me coming back and motivated, man, is like, I'm a big Gambrills guy. Like, that's my office. You know what I mean? Those are my people. That's my family. But like, when it comes to R2P, I've never had a bad encounter with a DPT or an intern, or even like the high school kids that come and do the stuff. You know what I mean? I'm invested in this company. I've never had a bad day, man. And it's always funny because I've always been treated as the professional athlete, but I will tell you that in my experience in performance centers, I'm always put in the corner as an adaptive professional athlete, because I'm not the NFL player that's bringing the $1 million contract or paying a facility five G's a month or whatever it is that they're paying. That's never happened in R2P. You know what I mean? Like, I've been given the respect, and I've been given the mutual understanding, like, I'm here to compete. But I got to give Drew his grace, man. Like, Drew has played a massive role in my progression and all the success. Like, man, I almost started crying because I gave him my Nationals 100-meter medal that I won last year, but I wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for him. And I wouldn't be the athlete I am today had I not been sponsored by R2P and PT being super invested and all the little things. Because everybody sees the greatness. Nobody sees, like, dude, I had a very weak left side, the glutes and the hamstring, and I don't have an ankle that's activating the left quad. And there's so much science behind being an adaptive athlete, especially an amputee, that I think Drew has learned. We've all learned together to, like, and I don't want to say master because we're still learning, but I think we've learned enough to be very proficient at what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's evolving. And as you unlock potential that you didn't know you had, it allows you to move in a way that you never moved before, which is great. But then that usually opens up Pandora's box of, oh, I didn't know that this area needed attention. And then you address that and you kind of level up again. It was funny. I remember when Josh and I started working together back when R2P started, one quote that he said that stuck out with me, and he was working with somebody and they were doing something. They were coming in for a basic injury and they were doing a very non-traditional approach to it. I was like, Josh, what are you doing? And I was like, am I dumb? Like, why am I not doing this or somebody, or am I just missing the point? And he was like, I like to make rehab not feel like rehab. And I was like, yeah, that is a really good way of putting it. And there's a reason why our facilities are set up the way that they are. And John, we're at our Mount Airy office right now, and it's not D.C. We're about an hour north of D.C. It's a little bit past the suburbs, a little bit more rural. We do have an active athletic population that's here, but if you walk outside these doors, you'll find some people in their 50s, their 60s, maybe even a couple of people in their 70s. And it's funny, the common theme is everybody has the same mindset. Everybody wants to be treated like an athlete. They want to be treated like they are active. And it's a huge part of our branding as a company. When you come in, it's a big warehouse-style facility. We've got open turf. We have kind of the athletic training room-style tables against the wall. And it's pretty cool because you'll go in and you'll see a professional athlete, a high school athlete, a grandparent, somebody who's never worked out before, but they have a labor-intensive job and they need to get back to work. And the common theme is everybody wants to be there. And I think you had talked about, like, it's great coming in and working with PTs that want to work with you and treat you like an athlete. It is equally important that when we have patients come in who want to be pushed. And that was my most frustrating thing. When I was in school, you have to do clinical rotations at certain places. And it was it was challenging as a clinician to go into a place and working with people who didn't want to be there. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. And it can be, honestly, the staff. And maybe, if you don't have a great staff, then obviously people aren't going to want to work with you. It can be the resources that you're given. It can be simple things, though, with just like the mindset and the approach. And I had a couple different rotations, whether it was hospital-based or inpatient-based. You have a lot of people that have a lot of odds stacked up against them. They haven't been dealt the best hand. They don't have the great set of circumstances, and they come in just defeated. And sometimes you can turn that bus around and you can get them moving in the right direction and you can help motivate them. But it is an absolute game changer when people walk into your clinic as a patient saying, I want you to push me. I want you to make me better, and I'm going to be a part of that process. And as a PT, it's one of the most enlightening things and motivating things that you can say, because I'm starting to tell myself, like, I better bring my A game. Because if I don't, this guy or girl's going to leave, and they're going to go 100%. Down the street to somebody else who is going to work.
And I'll tell you, like, even at Gambrills, like, we're all friends, but I'll tell you, if the energy's low, like, I'll say it. I'm like, you guys better wake up. Like, what do I got to do? Like, bring energy drinks and stuff. But I think the cool thing for me, and it's not just in the PT setting, it's just fitness and health in general. I think the greatest thing that's happened in the company has been, like, watching me train for the highest level of competition. And if you're feeling sorry about yourself, you may not know the story of the amputee that's in the blocks with Drew and all the stuff, but you're like, man, like, I just had an ACL repair. This dude is missing a whole limb, you know what I mean? And he's getting after it in this training and whatever, and he's having a great mood. And, like, that's why I love doing what I'm doing, man. Because no matter what you're going through, it could always be worse. You know?
Now, you just mentioned training. Bring us up to speed. What are you currently involved in personally? Like, what are some of your athletic endeavors that you're training for?
Yeah.
And then after we get into that, I want you to touch on just some of the other stuff you're doing from a professional standpoint, not professional athlete standpoint, but more of like a career advocacy, things outside of your training as well.
Yeah. So I made the decision to retire from track and field and CrossFit. There's no money, man. There's no money in adaptive sports. I spent a lot of money, and don't get me wrong, I did well for one of the few fully sponsored professional adaptive athletes. Cannot complain. Thank God for that. Thank everybody that supported me. But it was just time, man. And it's just honestly, like, it's not realistic to train full time, right? Everybody, it was like, Derrick Henry spends $249,000 on body recovery stuff. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I may not spend $250K, but I can assure you the majority of my money goes to rehab and PT and chiro and all that stuff. So retired from that. I was training to compete in an Olympic weightlifting meet. I was supposed to go compete in the Arnold. Something happened between USAW and some athletes. I kind of withdrew from it. So as far as athleticism and my professional athletic career, I'm kind of taking a sabbatical right now. It's very hard being me because everybody wants to recruit me. High Rocks is a hot ticket item. You know, they want me to come out, showcase me, you know, for High Rocks. I'm not a runner, man. I don't want to run. That's why I give the High Rocks R2P team a hard time, especially Jay, because you're not a runner either, but I can't wait to see you compete. You know, but there's a lot of things like their marathon stuff. Triathletes reached out to me. You know, USA Volleyball wanted me to try some stuff. I think right now what I want to do is I want to really take it back to the foundations with Drew, and I want to be as strong as I can on the amputated side. So I need to work on my hip flexor like that. And that's the thing is I think the frustrating part has been like it's not like any other muscle memory where like it sticks. You know what I mean? If I'm this swole, I'm this swole. But like this stuff is like I'll work very hard for a season. Off season comes up and then you're weak again.
Yeah. Now, what was the idea behind that? Kind of going back to the basics and getting strong. Is that because I interpret that as two different ways? Is that you kind of shifting focus from your athletic pursuits, or is that you thinking more longevity? I need to do something that's going to put me in a position to live a quality of life that as well.
Longevity.
Okay.
And what I emphasize to people, I don't think rehab or PT is for injury. Like, yes, it plays a massive role in you coming back to recovery.
Yeah.
But I've done rehab as prehab.
Yeah.
Right? Like all the stuff that Drew has set up as my like PT is always my warm-up stuff. It's always been the 30, 45 minutes prior to getting under the bar or getting on the blocks or starting a CrossFit comp or whatever. Like that's what I think people are misunderstanding when it comes to rehab, right? Or PT or whatever you want to call it, because physical therapy doesn't necessarily have to be when you're injured, right? There's a lot of things that you can do, and it's like knock on wood, and I pray to God, but like, bro, I've got a lot of friends that are pro athletes in every league you can name, and they're always pulling something, or like I know other amputees that are always struggling, and I'm like, yo, like I don't really deal with a lot of this stuff, right? So maybe it can be, you know, I focus on sleep and the cold tubs that Josh hates and all that stuff, but I think physical therapy plays a big role, and I just, man, my biggest fear is like being 60 years old and I can't put on this prosthetic.
Yeah, it's that balancing act of being proactive and reactive, and there's, you know, you get the injury, you're reactive, and you have to come back from that. But there are certain things that you can do to put yourself in a more favorable position. Now, I do want to get into some of the non-athletic endeavors you're in, but you had mentioned something earlier that I'd love to pick your brain on, because I am guilty of this at times. You had mentioned you're kind of a hot commodity, and there's a variety of different communities that you could immerse yourself in, and it would be mutually beneficial for all parties. And when that happens, you're somebody who is wanted. How do you go about saying no? Like, how do you choose what is of value to you now, personally, professionally? And this is coming from somebody, you know, I'm married, I've got 3 kids. Professionally, I always say yes to everything. Oh, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. Oh, my kids have a tournament we can sign up for. Sign them up for it. And it's easy to overextend yourself. How did you go about starting to set up boundaries? Or how did you figure out what you're going to make a priority moving forward? Or does that just evolve and different phases of life bring about different boundaries?
No, I think that if you don't set the boundaries, life itself is going to stop you and you're going to burn out and you're not going to be joyful about what you do. And that can seep into your marriage. That can seep into your children as a father. For me, it was the end of the year last year. I had a benefit gala. You know, we'll get into the nonprofit stuff. We'll get into the law stuff. But a lot of people don't realize I didn't have the luxury of just being a professional athlete. You know, I'm competing and I'm training, but I'm also like changing laws, and I'm also doing nonprofit stuff. I'm also advocating. I'm also speaking. There were so many things that I was doing that I didn't get to just focus on training and then go home and recover and then do it again tomorrow, right? I don't want to say I got burnt out, because I don't think that's what it was. I think I was sensing the irritability of it all. And it's a dangerous game, because as an adaptive athlete, in order for my name to get out there and do the things that I did, you had to say yes to everything. You had to play the game and invest. And that's the thing, is like, there are so many people that are like, oh, I want John Edward Heath's life. And I'm like, you don't know the amount of money that I invested to go to that competition, or to go speak in front of these people, or be the only amputee in this area. So what I did, as you know, I've been back and forth from Australia and here. When I came back this last time and I made the decision to walk away, I was very scared because I didn't know if I was coming back. So this is my second interview that I've done since I made this decision to like set boundaries. Because every interview, every podcast, every time there was a camera, I would always say yes. I started getting anxiety attacks in these interviews. I'm a great speaker and I don't freak out, but it was like starting to scare me where I was at. So my goal was in December, I said, I've got the benefit gala December 6th. After December 6th, I'm going to take like 6 weeks off. And all I want to do is fall in love with the barbell again. I want to snowboard as much as I can. And I want to sleep. Okay? I did that. And slowly but surely, it was like, I actually started increasing PRs. Like I just snatched 195. You know what I mean? I clean and jerk 265 in this time frame, right? So the progression was there because I was giving myself some sort of boundary. Then after that, it was like, okay, where do I see myself in the next year and what is it that I want to do? And in that is where I made the decision that I wanted to take over the community space in my backyard. I think I've neglected the DMV a little bit too much. I've been gone. I've trained. I lived in California for 10 years. I've lived in Iceland. I lived in Germany. I've lived overseas for a very long time. And for me, it was like we changed this law and I saw the need for community, but I also saw the need for someone like me in our backyard where like, I hope that the next amputee that walks up to R2P, I'm the first person you guys call. You know what I mean? And like, there are certain instances that people don't understand that injury doesn't necessarily need to be as dramatic as an amputation. It will weigh you down. And if there's something that I can challenge everybody on, it's the fact that you cannot question my mental fortitude. If there's something I can bring on the table, I may not be a doctor of physical therapy, but I am a coach. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many things that I bring to the table that I want to give our community. There are 5.6 million amputees in the United States. Let's integrate them. Let's bring them into this. I have been blessed to be around communities like R2P. I want the average disabled person to wheel in here and be like, I want to get better. I want longevity. I want to fix what I haven't done in 15 years because the last PT probably burned them. You know, so I would say best advice for you is you have to look at what boundaries look like for you and really weigh on the pros and cons as if it's really worth it. Because it's easy to say yes, right? Yep. I'm just not willing to jeopardize my happiness anymore.
It is funny how when you start to spend less time stressing and focusing on what was always the goal, you end up doing better.
Man, can I tell you how frustrating that is, though? Because it's like, imagine if like I had this strength last season, you know, but things happen for a reason. And like I said, it's a sabbatical. We don't know what's going to happen next year. And maybe that was what I needed.
Yep. It's funny. I mean, you read a lot of research on like productivity and creativity and like all of it comes back to like quit spending all of your time working on that task. Take a 30-minute break and go for a walk. Mm-hmm. And guess what happens? You come back refreshed. You come back energized. So it's always interesting when you see those parallels just in other areas of life as well. Talk a little bit about some of the non-athletic endeavors. You mentioned getting more involved in your own backyard. Yep. Coming back local, trying to be more involved in the DMV area. You're extremely active in Annapolis. What are some of the other organizations or initiatives that you're a part of right now?
So I'm the lead for the So Everybody Can Move Active Maryland. What that is that prior to this law changing January 1st of 2025, Maryland residents were denied secondary prosthetics for movement, meaning that if an amputee wanted to go run and they requested a running blade, it was denied because it was deemed not medically necessary.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Okay. So as a veteran, I saw how privileged I am. And a lot of people don't talk about the privilege that veterans get in this country, okay? In the midst of that is where I was like, okay, there are 45,000 disabled veteran nonprofits in the United States. That was my instant, like, somebody needs to do something for the average GP person. And I got motivated through movement, and as a coach and as an athlete, we're like, man, I want that person to go run that 5K. Like, I want it to be so normal in the DMV where, like, you're watching amputees run in marathons and nobody's like, oh, my God, it's so inspirational. It's just the person who's running just like you are, you know? So, I had a great team, delegates, senators, sponsors, and stuff that helped make this happen. I will tell you, this is like an anomaly because a bill doesn't first go round, turned into a law. Like, that's not how legislation works. And through the midst of that, I found that we are lacking resources for community for disabled people. So I founded the Adaptive Athletics Foundation of Maryland. Outside of Maryland, it's Adaptive Athletics MD. Okay, so like MD, like doctor, kind of makes me a subject matter expert. And what I've been doing, man, is we've been having adaptive days. I've been finding disabled people that want to compete in competitions, and we show up as a community full of disabled folks trying to just represent and really put a face to stuff. I got a big thing coming up with High Rocks at the end of the month where one of my athletes is competing. We're turning gyms adaptive. We're certifying people in adaptive coaching. So anything that you think, man, I've got relationships with the Caps, the Ravens, the Commanders, the Nationals, the Oreos. They're allowing me to bring a influx of disabled individuals to your everyday space. That's what's fueling my soul right now. And when I said that I wanted to take over, it's like, again, I've been blessed and I've had a lot of people in my corner for my success. I want to give back a little bit of that back to the average DMV resident, because it's played a big role in my recovery and my mental health and my success. I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from it.
It's not, I don't want to say it's not exciting work. It's not the sexy work.
100%.
Being involved in legislation, being involved in advocacy. We run a postdoctoral residency program here. And a big complaint in the PT world is, we don't get enough sports PT education. And, we're underprepared for that. After we graduate, we have to seek out a lot of that information on our own. So Josh had the great idea of like, well, hey, let's just start a residency program. And it's a nationally accredited program. Like, it's not something you do overnight, but those are the kinds of ideas Josh has. Like, right. Why don't we just start a school? And it's funny, all of the things that I found myself complaining about when I was a student. Oh, I don't know why the school does it this way, or I don't know why they can't teach that. Now that I'm on the back end of it.
You're educated.
And I see, all the regulations, all the standards, all of the things that it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe my teacher wasn't that bad. This was just the rule book they had to play by, or this was the process they had to go through. So it's got to be fascinating that when you see the struggles that individuals go through, trying to get medical devices, trying to get things approved, trying to get things authorized, and then you see behind the scenes how big of a process that is to get it turning. It's kind of that analogy, like, you can't turn a cruise ship on a dime. Like, it's a massive project to change that trajectory. It really gives you a new appreciation for the amount of legwork, effort, and honestly time that goes in to seeing massive change. And it's crazy because if an analogous component for me is when we have people who are post-op ACL, there are certain insurances that cut off physical therapy when they hit a certain functional outcome measure. And unfortunately, that functional outcome measure is a scale that asks them about 20 different activities. And of those 20 things, there are only 4 that even involve running. Right. So it's, can they put shoes and socks on? Can they stand for an hour? Can they sit for an hour? Can they walk up and down a flight of steps? And it's frustrating as a PT because they're maxing out and hitting their ceiling effect on this scale 2 months post-op. Right. They haven't even been medically cleared to begin running, and they're still 6 months away from doing the activity that got them injured in the first place. And that's like, oh, well, it's no wonder we have so many people re-tear their ACLs because they have to get kicked out of PT before they even do that. Same thing here. It's, these people aren't getting cleared to get the running blade and the things that are deemed not medically necessary or elective. Well, guess what? If they had that, think about how much more physically able they'd be. Think about how much more mentally positive they would be as well. And it's frustrating. At this point, I'm just venting out loud because it's...
but that's what sold the convincing. Yeah. Because you're paying an upfront cost that's going to save you millions of dollars in the future.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because if not, they're going to be right in the doors of R2P for physical therapy because they were running with a walking prosthetic.
Yeah.
We would have prevented all of these thousands of dollars of PT had they had a running blade. You know?
And that's what we always present it to the insurance company. It's like, all right, well, do you want to pay for 4 more weeks of $70 PT sessions, or do you want to pay for a $17,000 surgery? Because that's your two options 100%. At this point. John, we'll wrap up here, but for those who are listening, what advice would you give them for anybody that is going through just a big change? And whether it's a PT student getting ready to start their career, or somebody who is in their career getting ready to change a job, or an athlete who's listening that just had a significant injury that you'd kind of alluded to, you lose your identity temporarily, or just somebody going through a big personal change. You've been through a lot of them, and you've come out on the other side of them, in my eyes, on a very positive spin on that. What advice would you give to somebody going through one of these big events right now?
Easier said than done, but it's gonna be all right. I remember being younger, and my head would spin because something would come up, and I'd lose it. Right, like even in the years of being disabled and surgeries and stuff, like they would be like, "Hey, we got to get this X-ray or this MRI," and I'd lose it, man. I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna need another surgery," and we worry about so many outcomes that we don't know are actually going to be the outcomes, right? So for me, I have embraced the journey that I'm in. I think we think that 100% is 100% every moment of the day. Well, I'm going to educate you on something, on somebody who's done it to the highest level possible. You can't perform at 100% of the time. If you're 10% today, if your 100% is 10% today, then do 100% at that 10%. And whether that means it's just the bar, then do the best job you can do at just the bar. If you couldn't do the bar and all you can do is a PVC pipe, then you better be the grandmaster of PVC piping. You know what I mean? So I think, honestly, you've got to step back and remove the emotions and truly understand, one, it could be worse, but also are you really wasting a lot of energy on stuff that you don't control? What can you control? If you're recovering from a situation, are you taking care of your meals? Are you sleeping properly? Is your recovery going well? Oh no, you're playing video games and you're not listening to your PT. And so all these external factors do play a role in what you did control, right? Same thing with work and life and all that stuff. We are so focused on the 5-year plan, the 365-day change. I just had a situation on one of the people that I mentor, wigging out, man, over a situation, and I'm talking him down a ledge, and then following day calls me and was like, "Oh, it happened." And I was like, "So why did we waste that 45 minutes of time and energy only for it to come out exactly how you wanted it to come out?" You're freaking out over things that you don't really know, No,
that's great advice, and it's that the perception is often more dangerous than the actual reality.
100%.
So we get ourselves worked up almost with all of the endless possibilities that may happen. But guess what? Not all of them are going to happen. Right. So prepare, put yourself in a good position, but at some point you just got to let life come to you and attack it as it goes.
Exactly.
John, for those who are listening that want to follow along with what you're doing, whether it's with some of your athletic endeavors, some of your personal endeavors, some of your advocacy efforts, what's the best way for somebody to follow along that journey, get in touch with you, or just stay in the know?
I'm a millennial, so Instagram's going to be my number one. But my professional name's been Carbon Fiber John. Everybody's known me as Carbon Fiber John. But the advocacy and the nonprofit adaptive sports world is going to be Adaptive Athletics MD. So any platform that you type those two names, you're going to run into something and find something.
Awesome. I know you were a busy guy. I honestly don't know how I convinced you to come up to Mount Airy today, but I appreciate the time, appreciate the effort. Anybody, if you got to listen to this, you just got a gift. This was great. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, like, and subscribe. You're listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. This is Dr. Zach Baker, special guest John Heath. Thanks for listening.